Welcome to our talk today again on the excuses that people make about not coming to Christ. And today we're going to think about the excuse of the Big Bang, and that people think the Big Bang has proved the Bible wrong. I'm not going to do a fresh talk. I'm going to just share here a talk I did just over a year ago at an evening service, particularly aimed at young people and the subject of the Big Bang. So I encourage you to watch it. It's a wee bit longer than most of our talks, but I encourage you to watch it and also to share it to others.
Okay, boys and girls, young people, we're going to think tonight of the subject of the Big Bang. And this is something in secondary school you'll come across, probably particularly in physics. And it is a theory how this world was made. Now, we see in the next wee slide, sometimes there is a thought that there is a battle going on between science and religion. And religion says one thing, and science says something totally different. And it's almost given the picture that if you follow the way of religion, you have left your brain outside. Your brain isn't working because people who follow science and who are scientific will think something very different. But it is not a battle between science and religion. Whether it's what we're thinking tonight about Big Bang, or next week we'll be thinking about evolution, it's not a battle between science and religion. And let me explain why that is. Click on the next slide there, please. There are two types of science. There is what I'll call observable science. There is the science that you can see, the science you can test in the lab. And I hope for those who go to secondary school, you do scientific experiments. It's great fun doing scientific experiments, as long as you don't set the whole place on fire. It's a great thing to do. And you look at different things and you test things, and that is science that you can observe. You can see, you can test. But there's also theoretical science. And theoretical science and all the different formulas and theories come in about different things. Now, some of this theoretical science you can observe whether it's true or not. And often the theory is very close to what people observe, and it can be very close. But sometimes the theories can be a massive way distant from what people observe. And what I'm saying is, what the problem is not between religion and observable science. The problem is between what the Bible teaches and some of the theories that people have made up which have never been proved. And that's important to remember. So it's not a battle between religion and science. It's a battle between one set of beliefs taken from the Bible and another set of beliefs put forward, often by scientists. Now let's think about the Big Bang. The next picture, give you an idea. And I am no expert. It's a long, long time since I sat in a physics class. 32 years, I think, since I sat in a physics class at Queen's. It's the last time I sat in a physics class. Big Bang. This is an idea that 13.8 billion years ago, all that existed was one tiny, tiny wee bit of matter. We're talking about something on the scale of an atom here. So not something you could even see. It was so small, it was so heavy and dense, and so hot. And it then suddenly expanded. Sometimes they don't like the idea of Big Bang or exploded, but it suddenly, all this energy which was put up in this tiny, tiny thing, all released. And the universe, as we know, began to be made, to be expanded over the years that would follow. So much of the expansion happened in the first second or part of a second. You can read about this, and then everything came on. Now, this is a theory which began about 100 years ago. This theory was not thought of until 100 years ago. And see in the next picture, before that time, the accepted view among scientists was that of a static universe, that the world has always existed. The world had no beginning and has always been there. That's what Einstein believed. But then about 100 years ago, things began to change. And people then introduced this new idea called the Big Bang. Let me explain where this idea came from. Shoot on the next picture there. We see some famous people who in the science world. Edwin Hubble, the Hubble telescope is named after him. And another man called Festo Schleifer. What a great name, Festo Schleifer. And these were men who, looking out into space with telescopes, looking very distant into space, and what they saw was that if you looked very far into space, the light appeared to be red. Now, you think of a rainbow. White light goes into water droplets, and then it is then bent into different colors of the rainbow. And the idea is if something is red, if white light has been turned into something red, it has been stretched. If it turns into something that's bluish, it's been contracted, it's been made smaller. And so by looking so far into space and seeing the light of so many distant planets or even beyond that, galaxies and so forth, they could see this red light, which gives the idea it's being stretched, that it's going away from the earth. And from this, the theory is that the world as we know it is expanding. The universe is getting bigger and bigger. And that's where the idea comes from. The next wee picture you see there, a man called Georges Lemaitre, who was a Belgian scientist, also a priest. He put this all together and said, basically, if you think that the world is expanding, work it backwards, you will come back to a beginning when it became so small and that. And this was quite a significant thing. One of the things that probably drove Lemaitre was the idea that it was working against the idea that the world has always existed, this new idea that the world had a beginning, which in his mind fitted in better, of course, with what the Bible says about how the world was created. But the Big Bang theory then came from that. If you think the world is getting bigger and you can measure it, they say from these distant lights, work it backwards. And if you work it back again to 13.8 billion years is when it would have been a tiny, tiny wee thing. That's the thought. That's the idea. Another thought came. We've moved now from the 1920s to the 1960s. The next picture. And we come across some other scientists, Arno Penzias and Robert Wilson, and they were doing work, and they were aware that there was interference with satellite signals and that. And in their research, and they got a Nobel Prize for this, they discovered that in space, there's this cosmic microwave background. In other words, there's radiation. There's these microwaves in space. And they discovered this in the 1960s. And their argument from this is a leftover. This is a leftover from the Big Bang. That there's these microwaves in space, in every part of space, which is a leftover from the Big Bang. The third thought, and we see the next picture, the third thought, it comes from the idea of the ratio of hydrogen, helium, and other trace elements. If you look at the hydrogen and helium, the amount that's in the atmosphere and in the world and so forth, that makes up the world, it fits in with the idea that we have come from a star that exploded, similar to something like the Big Bang. That is the thought behind it, and that. Now, that's the evidence for the Big Bang. There are other things as well. That's part of the evidence. Just flick on the next slide there. There are problems. This didn't come from a Christianist, this man, Etan Siegel. He's these ideas that they don't fit in with the Big Bang, to do with space temperature. There's certain things you'd expect to find if there's a Big Bang which don't exist, and the thing to do with spatial curvature. Things which beyond my mind, but I'm just putting that out there, is that there are problems with the theory of the Big Bang, and the idea that it is accepted and proved beyond doubt just doesn't tally at all. But if our young people, when you go to university, this will be presented to you as something that is an absolute fact. That this is something that has definitely happened, it's beyond doubt, it's absolutely proved. The point I want to make here is it's not that way at all. Let's go to the next picture, back to what we were thinking about. Remember what we said at the beginning? There is observable science, science, which you can observe and see and test, and then there's theoretical science. Next picture. The things that we're looking at there, the red shift, that's the red light. You can observe that. That's observable science. The cosmic microwave background, that's something that can be tested, is there. And the hydrogen-helium ratio. Those are three things you can observe, scientists can observe and test. But what has happened is from those three ideas, they have taken, flick it on there, a massive leap to this idea that a Big Bang happened. The fact that the universe appears to be expanding, the fact there's microwaves in the world around us, the fact that there's a certain hydrogen-helium ratio, they've jumped from those three thoughts to this idea of a Big Bang. So much so that it's almost presented as an absolute certainty. Let me say what science is doing here. The next picture, we see three pieces of a jigsaw. Three pieces of a 500-piece jigsaw. And in many ways, what the scientists have is they've taken three pieces, okay, maybe a few more pieces, but not of a 500-piece jigsaw, but I would say of a multi-million-piece jigsaw. They've taken three pieces of it, and they have then tried to draw the rest of the picture from it. So if you had those three pieces of that jigsaw, right, could you draw what the full picture is? How many attempts would it take you to draw the full picture? Now, if you look very closely, I think there's a swan upside down in one of the pieces. That'll give you an idea. But how many attempts would it take you to get anywhere near what the right picture is? Looking at that, can you guess what the picture is? Flick the picture on. How many attempts would it have taken for you to get that and to be able to draw that? You just can't do it. It's just beyond. But this is what science is doing. It's taking a few pieces of the jigsaw, and not only are they saying this is the picture, they're saying this is the picture with absolute certainty. And it's just not credible. It is just something which is beyond belief, just to do that. There's so many other things. Click on our next picture. So we've looked at the Big Bang. So they've jumped from these three ideas and they say there's a Big Bang. Flick it on there. But equally, you can look at these three things and say, well, there's nothing about these three things which are inconsistent with the idea of creation. The fact that the earth, the universe is expanding, well, God could have made the world that way. He made it, and he even talks in the Bible that God stretches out the heavens. Is that a reference to that? That indeed God made a world that's expanding? The cosmic microwave background, that does not prove that indeed there's a Big Bang. How God made the world, could that have been come from that? And the hydrogen-helium ratio doesn't prove anything at all. So what they've done is they've got three wee pictures of the jigsaw. They've said what the big picture is, but how can they be right about it? How can they be certain? But if you listen to scientists talk about this, or you go onto YouTube and listen, it is done with absolute certainty. And yet the evidence is so slight, and it could point in a very different direction. Put the next picture on there, and that. The world around us. What these people are doing with these theories is they're trying to have a world that exists without a creator. A world that doesn't need another person designing it and making it. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to get formulas and ideas so that the world made itself. That's what basically is saying. Some of these people would even say we should worship the stars because reality, we are made up with stardust. The stars exploded, and eventually what came out of the stars came to make us up. That's some of the things they're saying. The world has made its sense. Does this world seem to be a world that has made itself? If you take just two little scientific facts, the fact that the earth is rotating around the sun at the absolutely perfect distance, so that on the one hand we're not too close and getting burnt up. On the other hand, we're not too far away and getting totally frozen. How is it that the earth just goes round the world at the perfect distance? How is it that the angle of the earth's axis, which turns around, is the absolutely perfect angle for this world to exist? Did that happen by chance? Did somehow a big bang all those 13.8 billion years ago release gas, which eventually formed molecules, which eventually somehow formed stars, which then exploded, and then eventually formed planets, and on those planets somehow life was formed and created? That somehow that could just happen? My problem is I do not have enough faith to believe that could happen. Not speaking as a Christian here, but speaking as somebody who has studied a bit of science. I just cannot believe that that could happen. That's the most amazing faith people have. So understand this. The argument between creation and Big Bang, it's not a matter of religion versus science. It's a matter of one faith in creation against another faith in a Big Bang that came out of nowhere. The other thing is, you take this tiny, tiny little thing that everything began from. Some would even argue it was nothing. There was nothing. Originally, they would call it the cosmic egg, this little thing that then exploded. Others don't like that idea because then the question is, where did the cosmic egg come from? But let me give you a very challenging equation to see if you can work something out. Flick it on there. 0 plus 0 equals 0. So if there was nothing and there was no creator, what would you get? 0. There had to be something there. There had to be a creator who put something there, who made it. Nothing there and no creator means 0. There has to be a God. This has to have come from somewhere. It can't just have happened. It had to come from some origin. So, I hope that helped you a wee bit. I encourage you, if you go into Answers in Genesis, there's a lot of good talks and different materials about this. You can look at that there.
I trust you benefited from that, and again, I encourage you to share this to others.